Hello, I'm Corinna Harrod and this is the Monday Night Review. Hello and welcome to episode 101, also known as part 2 of the Zodiac. I hope you enjoyed part 1. Part 2 is a lot, not in terms of murder, although there is of course some murder involved, but he's nothing if not a fan of putting pen to paper, the Zodiac. So in this episode we're going to talk about all his letters. But we're going to talk about how, and I said in the first episode, a lot of what we know about the Zodiac and a lot of our understanding of him comes from these ciphers and letters that he sent, not necessarily from the crime scenes themselves. And there's a lot of letters. So some of them I'm going to read out in full, some I'm going to read out in part, some I'm going to basically gloss over because otherwise we'd be here all day. So I'm going to get straight into it. We discussed in episode 1 the 5 murders that are officially attributed to the Zodiac. And it's in this episode that things are going to get complicated. The Zodiac, as I said, was a prolific letter writer. And although it's through these letters and the continued investigation that not only by police departments, but also journalists that would then link other unsolved crimes to this case. So I'm going to approach this chronologically as the letters were received and then as the suspected linked murders were discovered. So some of these murders we're going to talk about today happened before the Lake Herman Road attack in 1968. Some happened after. So yes, we're going to go chronologically from the murder of Paul Stein, which was the last thing we covered in episode 1. But we may jump back in time, but I will warn you, it's complicated. Some of the letters are long and rambling, others are fairly brutal. To avoid the episode being 8 hours long, I'm going to read excerpts from most of them rather than the full thing. And the reason these letters are so important is that literally everything in them gives us a clue. From his unusual spelling of certain words, for example, Christmas, he always spells with 2 S's on the end, to the fact that there's pretty much always too much postage on the envelope. He'll often double the postage. Some think this was because he would do the letters and then he would drive around. They were posted from all over the place and he didn't want there to be a problem if he drove too far for there to be a problem with the delivery, if that makes sense. So that's all speculation. But the fact that there were these spelling peculiarities, he always spells paradise with a C near the end instead of a S, mean that it's then easier to tell that these letters are from the Zodiac, but it's also gives an idea as to background and all of that kind of thing that profilers do and policemen do. The murder of Paul Stein and the threat to the school children made the Zodiac go from some sinister attacker of couples in relatively small areas to a boogeyman who was going to attack anyone in the big city, anyone, anywhere. The problem with so many communications from the Zodiac to the media meant that there was a choice to be made. Publish the letters and give the killer the publicity boost he clearly craved, giving him more energy, but also provide the opportunity for someone to recognise something. There have been numerous murderers, including the Unabomber, who have been caught when a member of the public has seen a letter that they've written or a note that they've left and said, wait a minute, that looks like someone's writing. Or in the case of Ted Kaczynski, I believe it was his brother-in-law that said, that sounds like something he would say, and goes to the police. So there's that choice, or you keep the letters out of the media, which keeps hysteria to a minimum. It doesn't give the killer what he wants, but you don't know that killer is going to not respond, as he says, and attack in a larger way with a bomb. But also, you know, the more eyes on those letters, the more likely that someone will say, hang on a minute, these ciphers, my son is obsessed with ciphers, and, you know, that kind of thing. One of the things that's so fascinating about the Zodiac is how much he would have got away with had he not been such a keen communicator. Now, of course, As we don't know who he is, technically he got away with it, but there have definitely been moments like after the murder of Paul Stein where he has come close to being caught. But it's through these letters and ciphers that he gives way more information and runs the risk of being caught. At the time, he must have wondered if they were going to catch him. And because the murders differed quite a lot, he wore a costume for one, never again, stabbed some, all of that. There are many that wouldn't necessarily be linked. And he sort of implies that there are many that aren't linked to him. And I find it very difficult to reconcile the Zodiac, who has potentially committed many more murders, some of which we'll talk about today, and the Zodiac who wants to immediately phone up the police and see the effects of what he's caused. The Zodiac who wants to give extra information to the police and the media about murders that he's done, and yet there are some that he's happy not to mention or take credit for. I find that difficult to understand psychologically. Even after the murder of Paul Stein, where he very nearly gets caught, we have to assume that he was spoken to by the two policemen, and that must have been terrifying for him, maybe thrilling, maybe it added to it, but he doesn't stop wanting to write the letters. Something to notice that they were usually written in blue felt tip, would have, as I said, double the necessary postage, would mostly have "please rush to the editor" written on the envelope. And I find sometimes throughout his letters, he will use the word please, or he'll use the word thank you, but I think it's mostly please. So, and I find this unusual. "Please rush to the editor." There is always, for me, when reading the Zodiac's letters, something pleading or desperate about it. "Please rush to the editor." That is not, to me, that doesn't come across as someone who is confident. And I find that very interesting. His letters are sloppily written, but the ciphers are incredibly precise and neat. For example, a number of his letters have had crossings out. So if he's made a spelling mistake, he might cross it out. Whereas other people might think, "Oh, I've got to start over again and rewrite it." He doesn't. But his ciphers are incredibly neat. And I think that shows that the ciphers to him are his art. They are a creation. The letters are less important to him. They can just be dashed off anywhere and posted, but the ciphers are his art. So on the 8th of November 1969, he sends a greeting card, which would become known as the dripping pen card. All his letters, because there are so many, would get names. So I will tell you the names so that when you look back, if you want to go and look at the Zodiac Killer website, for example, you can go and see which letters I'm referring to. But the dripping pen card says, "This is the Zodiac speaking. I thought you would need a good laugh," in a reference to the really unfunny pen joke that's on the front of the card, which is why it's called the dripping pen card. It's got a picture of a fountain pen, and it says something like, "I wanted to write to you, but I just washed my pen and now I can't get it to do a thing," or something. Anyway, I thought you would need a good laugh before you hear the bad news. You won't get the news for a while yet. P.S. Could you print the new cipher on your front page? I get awfully lonely when I'm ignored. So lonely I could do my thing! ! And then he signs it with the Zodiac symbol. But of course, again, this for me, the lack of confidence is the P.S. Could you print this new cipher on your front page? Is so, to me, desperate. Whereas I feel like someone with more confidence would say, "Print this on your front page." So the last word, "I could do my thing," the last word thing is overwritten and underlined 6 times. He also writes underneath a tally. So from now on, he would write tallies under his Zodiac symbol or around there. And his tally at the moment is 7. So he writes Zodiac symbol 7, SFPD, San Francisco Police Department 0. Now, as far as we know, he has actually killed 5. So the implication here is that he has killed 2 more. Now, this is going to be confusing. Just remember this. This is 69. And he's saying 7 but we'll go on and find later that actually there are, I'd say at least three murders that are attributed to him before 68. So is he not counting them? Are they not his? Is he making these numbers up? It's one of the many weird things about the Zodiac. Don't go on Reddit. I mean, do go on Reddit, but my God, Reddit has a whole Zodiac section. You can lose days in there, and I pretty much have. So there are people who will listen to this who are Zodiac obsessives, for lack of a better word, and they will hate that I'm not including more information. But you could, if you're doing a podcast, I've read books on this. I've read a book that's in 3 parts on this. There is so much information, so much to break down that I can't possibly include it all. But yeah, there is a lot on Reddit about which murders to attribute to the Zodiac. But here he's saying 7 to him, and it could be that at the time he was trying to claim the unsolved murders of Deborah Furlong and Kathy Snoosey in the August of 1969. But these murders were later found to be the work of Carl F. Werner. But I think quite often the Zodiac does take credit for it. And for he makes this number up, I believe. And the fact that he has added these 2 on, they hadn't yet been solved. And then I just think it's odd. Again, I'm going to say it again. He draws attention. We know that he sent letters with facts about the crimes that he's committed that nobody apart from the killer would know. The position of the bodies, how many times they were shot, the ammunition, etc., that weren't shared with the media. And yet, from now on, he's very vague. He doesn't say those 2 girls. Well, we know he didn't kill those 2 girls, but why is he vague about some and not about others? So the cipher included in the bus bomb letter, there's a letter called the bus bomb letter, which was previously after Paul Stein, and it included a cipher which would become known as the 340 cipher. It has 340 symbols in it, and this was published in full by both the Chronicle and the Examiner. So throughout this, the papers behave very well. As soon as they receive something, they notify the police. They send it to the police. They publish some things, not others. They don't publish anything they deem dangerous. So, for example, when he does diagrams on how to build a bomb, they think, obviously, this is not a good thing to publish to lots of people, to let them know how to make a bomb, because the Zodiac is factually accurate. So, and they often publish things on page 8 or bury it somewhere or put it under a title that sort of diminishes the effect. So they do handle it really well. But there's this cipher that's published in full by both the Chronicle and the Examiner. And it wasn't until December 2021 that the FBI announced the cipher had finally been solved, 50 years after it was sent. And bear in mind, there are still some Zodiac ciphers that have not been solved. And I watched the TV show that I don't remember what it was called. If you go on your Fire Stick or whatever TV you have and look for Zodiac, there's loads of stuff on there. But I watched a room full of people like someone who works at NASA, someone who works at the FBI cracking codes, someone who solved some, do you know what I mean? Like the world's best brains struggling with these ciphers, which I think is pretty incredible. So this is what the cipher 340 reads according to the FBI. I hope you're having lots of fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show. Which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I'm not afraid, because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise, death. It's a very weird cipher, but interesting, I think, that he says, I now have enough slaves. Does that imply that he's going to stop? So the bus bomb letter, it feels far more hostile than the dripping pen card. The dripping pen card is sort of chatty. The bus bomb letter I'm going to read out bits of because it's incredibly long. So I'm reading you an abridged version. But this gets sent to the Chronicle and it comes with this 340 cipher. So this is the Zodiac speaking. Up to the end of October, I have killed 7 people. I have grown rather angry with the police for their telling lies about me, so I shall change the way of my collecting of slaves. I shall no longer announce to anyone when I commit my murders. They shall look like routine robberies, killings of anger, and a few fake accidents. The police shall never catch me, because I've been too clever for them. 1. I look like the description passed out only when I do my thing. The rest of the time I look entirely different. I shall not tell you what my disguise consists of when I kill. 2. As of yet, I have left no fingerprints behind me. Contrary to what the police say in the killings, I wear transparent fingertip guards. All it is 2 coats of airplane cement coated on my fingertips, quite unnoticeable and very effective. 3. My killing tools have been bought through the mail order outfits before the ban went into effect, except one, and it was bought out of state. So as you can see, the police don't have much to work on. If you wonder why I was wiping the cab down, I was leaving fake clues for the police to run all over town with, as one might say. I gave the cops some busy work to do to keep them happy. Remember the term busy work. P.S. 2 cops pulled a goof about 3 minutes after I left the cab, and I was walking down the hill to the park when this cop car pulled up, and one of them called me over and asked if I saw anyone acting suspicious or strange in the last 5 to 10 minutes. And I said yes. There was this man who was running by waving a gun, and the cops peeled rubber and went around the corner as I directed them, and I disappeared into the park 1.5 blocks away, never to be seen again. So this, at the time that this letter was received, no policeman had reported seeing or stopping anyone. And this is the first that they'd heard of it. But we know that there were palm prints and fingerprints lifted from certain areas. So it's very hard to tell. Part of me is like, why would he lie? Why is he saying 7 if there's more than 7? But then also part of me thinks, is he saying that he's going to stop telling them things are going to look like accidents? They're going to look like other things. Is he saying this so that he doesn't have to do anything else? His work is going to be done for him. For every homicide that took place, and it's true, for loads of murders that took place, people would say, is that the Zodiac? He doesn't have to do anything. And I said in the first part, I wonder how much of it actually was the enjoyment of killing rather than the desire for fame. He then describes in this letter how he's going to make a bomb, which he calls the death machine, and he includes a diagram showing the setup for it, which is accurate, and it is a bomb that would work. He signs the letter with the usual Zodiac symbol, this time annotated with 5 crosses, and everyone says why 5, he's just said 7. I wonder if all his bluffing, this represents his victims, and the fact that his love of cryptograms and symbols, that's his art, means that he can't bring himself to lie on that. Does that make sense? Probably not. Maybe it's just my brain. But the difference between his writing on the letters, the neatness of his ciphers, makes me wonder whether for him the diagram and the symbols, that cannot lie, because it is art, it is creativity. So those 5 represent his true victims, and he's just added some numbers on. Could be wrong. So he demands that they publish all the details, but actually they keep the recipe for making the bomb out. It's just too dangerous to include. And he insists that the part of the police who stopped to talk to him was published in the papers, and it was. Officer Fuchs, who had been one of the officers, wrote a memorandum to state that he and his partner, Officer Zelms, did see the man in question, but did not stop to talk to him as they were looking for a black male, and this would fit. We know from the Paul Stein murder that the witnesses called in and said that they'd seen someone, and for some reason, the initial bolo was sent out for a black male. His story, Officer Fuchs' story, has changed over the years, but he maintained this throughout, though additional evidence has been found that seems to point to them stopping to speak to the suspect. Sadly, Officer Zelms was shot and killed in the line of duty on the 1st of January 1970, just a few months after the murder of Paul Stein, so he has not been able to add his voice to this. On the 20th of December 1969, the one-year anniversary of the Zodiac's first known attack, the killer posted a letter to Melvin Belli, including a small piece of Paul Stein's shirt. However, the usual festive postal delays meant that this letter didn't arrive until the 23rd of December. I had to check these dates because I was like, he posted it on the 20th. The delays meant it didn't arrive till the 23rd. That's pretty standard in the UK. I would say that's pretty normal post going on there. By which time Belli was in Germany for work, and the letter was forwarded to his office and then opened by his secretary. So let's all just spare a thought for his secretary who opens and reads this letter. It says, "Dear Melvin, this is the Zodiac speaking. I wish you a happy Christmas. The one thing I ask you is this, please help me. I cannot reach out for help because of this thing in me won't let me. I'm finding it extremely difficult to hold it in check. I am afraid I will lose control again and take my 9th and possibly 10th victim. Please help me, I'm drowning. At the moment, the children are safe from the bomb because it is so massive to dig in the trigger mech, requires much work to get it adjusted just right. But if I hold back too long from no nice, I will lose all control of myself and set the bomb up. Please help. I cannot remain in control for much longer." And then it has the Zodiac symbol at the end. Now, we know that Zodiac, you may hopefully remember from part one, Zodiac phoned and requested for Belli to go on the morning show and speak to him. But that phone call is confirmed as the Zodiac. The man who phoned up the TV show and spoke for a long time with Belli was not the Zodiac, and he confirms that in the bus bomb letter. I find it very odd that now he's asking for help. He asked for help, he made demands, Belli did what he was asked, and again, Belli responds. He puts notices in the papers saying, whatever you need, I'm here, I can help. Stop making it worse. It's better to come and talk to someone and we can work something out than to carry on at this and making it worse and worse. And he never hears anything back. In February 1970, the San Francisco Police Department is targeted with a pipe bomb that injures 9 police officers and sadly kills Sergeant Brian McDonald, who's closest to the blast when it goes off. The case remains unsolved, and for many, initially it was believed to be a direct attack from the Zodiac. I mean, he had completely changed his MO previously with the murder of Paul Stein. He had written about making a bomb. So for many, it was the logical conclusion that now he was directly attacking the police. However, it is not thought by the police to be something to do with the Zodiac. On the 23rd of March 1970, 23-year-old Catherine Johns and her 10-month-old baby set out on a journey from San Bernardino to Petaluma. A 400-mile trip to visit Kathleen's mother, who had said she was ill. Kathleen was not sure about that, but Kathleen knows the trip, so she is traveling with this baby. She herself is 7 months pregnant. So she's decided to travel at night while the baby sleeps. This is the 70s. So she has put the back seat down so that the 10-month-old can just lie flat there. And so it's not necessarily obvious that she's got a baby in the back. And on Highway 132 at midnight, having not seen anyone for some time, a car behind her starts flashing its lights and honking its horn. Now, she ignores it for a bit until she sees a petrol station ahead, and she decides to pull over and see what this guy wants. I don't know why she doesn't just carry on to the petrol station and pull in there. So she pulls over. The car pulls up beside her. She doesn't get out. She winds down the window. And the man says that her wheel is loose and he offers to fix it. So she says, great. She stays in the car. The man gets out and fiddles around with the wheel, says it should be fine now. She thanks him and he drives off, and she does too. Pretty immediately as she drives off, her wheel falls off altogether. The man reverses back down the road and says there's only four lug nuts left on there, and he can give her a lift to the next service station, which they can see in the distance. So Kathleen says, great. She gets the baby, gets a few things, gets into this man's car. But then they drive past the service station and the next one. And every time Kathleen mentions this, he changes the subject. And at one point she says in a rather pissed off way, as you would, do you always help people like this? And he responds by saying, after I'm done with them, they don't need help. And she says after that, she stopped talking to him. His demeanour changes completely, she says, and he says he's going to kill her and the baby, saying, you know you're going to die. You know I'm going to kill you. And then telling her to throw the baby out of the window, which she obviously ignores, but this is all he says. He repeats it every now and again, and they drive around for 2 hours with him saying that he's going to kill them and she should throw the baby out the window. And he goes to turn off the road. He realises that he has gone up a down ramp, so he stops to reverse, and Kathleen opens the car and makes a run for it across the field and hides in a drainage ditch. So she's crouching down in this ditch with her baby, 7 months pregnant, and the man has pulled the car over and has got a big flashlight out and is shouting, come back here, and is looking for her. Now, thank God, luckily for her, a truck comes along, a big 18-wheeler, and the driver sees something is going on, and he gets out and asks what's happening, and the abductor just gets in his car and drives off. Now Kathleen stands up and says, I need to go to the police, but she understandably refuses to get into the truck with the man and says, you have to go and find a woman to take me to the police station. And this man does. So I want to give, out of all this Zodiac stuff, I feel like the guy driving the 18-wheeler does not get enough of a shout out for being like, yeah, I see the situation and I'm going to pull over, and then when this woman is refusing to get into my car, I'm not going to tell her she's an idiot. I'm going to just find a woman to take her to the police station. Now, luckily, Kathleen is a clever woman. She spent the whole time in the car looking at this man and taking in his appearance. And she notes that he's not much taller than her. She's fairly tall. And she's had a really good look at him. And she's in the police station being questioned. And she gets questioned extensively. But she sees the wanted picture of the Zodiac and she says, that's him. She'd not seen the pictures of the Zodiac before. She lived in a different area to where the Zodiac attacks had been taking place. And as I said, they were, they weren't making it a hysterical front page thing every time. So she hadn't seen pictures of him before. But she was like, that is definitely him. And as we know, a lot of witnesses had said the Zodiac's about 5'8", 5'9". And a tall woman is going to be 5'7", 5'8". Obviously, there were taller women, but do you know what I mean? Like, I would say that would fit with her thinking, right, he's not much taller than me. So although there was a big deviation from his previous attacks, he's not abducted in this way before. Maybe this was going to be one of the things that he looked like an accident that he had said in his previous letter. Whether he picks her up, obviously he hadn't been able to see the baby and he hadn't seen that she was pregnant when she was in the car. So whether he'd planned on picking her up, murdering her quite quickly, and the fact that she was pregnant, the fact that she had a baby, meant he just couldn't kind of go through with it, or he was gearing himself up to go through with it, or whatever, bought her some time. We don't really know. As Kathleen is speaking to the police, a report comes through that there is a car burning on Highway 132, and it would turn out that it was Kathleen's car that was later found to be burnt out where she had originally stopped, I believe. So it looks like the perpetrator has gone back to the car and burnt it out. Now, he makes reference to this in what's known as the Kathleen Johns letter. And it's speculated to many that he may have realised that he left prints and stuff on the car. So that's why he burnt the evidence. At the time, however, police seemed to put little weight on the woman's claim that she'd been abducted by the Zodiac, whether they doubted her identification of the man, because it was so different to his crimes, or it was another area that he hadn't attacked him before. They're very dismissive of her identification. So this is March. On the 20th of April 1970, a letter was received by the San Francisco Chronicle, again sent to the editor, again stamped with twice the necessary postage, that says, "This is the Zodiac speaking. By the way, have you cracked the last cipher I sent you? My name is..." And then he sends 13 symbols. "I'm mildly curious to know how much money you have on my head now. I hope you do not think I was the person who wiped out the blue meanie with the bomb at the cop station." And then he talks about that for a bit. And then he says, "I've killed 10 people to date. It would have been a lot more, but the bus bomb was a dud. I was swamped out by the rain we had a while back." Now, there's no part of Paul Stein's shirt enclosed. There is mention of the bomb from the previous letter, which had not been made public. So they know that this is the Zodiac. This is a genuine. And this letter also includes a new diagram of a bomb. Again, this would work, that he's planning on making. It's simpler than the original. And the Zodiac's tally at the bottom of the letter is now 10 to the SFPD's 0. But note, this is the 20th of April. No mention of the Kathleen Johns abduction. So he's referring to the pipe bomb at the police station. No mention of the abduction of Kathleen Johns. But 6 days later, on the 28th of April, what became known as the Dragon card was sent to the Chronicle, and on the front is a picture of a prospector on a donkey saying "sorry to hear," and then there's a prospector on a dragon, and that says "your ass is a dragon." Again, I'm assuming this is like 60s American humour that I'm just not getting. So the letter reads, quote, "If you don't want me to have a blast, you must do 2 things. 1, tell everyone about the bus bomb with all the details. 2, I would like to see some nice Zodiac buttons wandering around town. Everybody else has these buttons, like," then he draws a peace sign button, "Black Power, Melvin eats blubber, etc. Well, it would cheer me up considerably if I saw a lot of people wearing my button. Please no nasty ones like Melvin, thank you." Again, I just find this buttons thing, so I just find him so weird, like, buttons? You want buttons? But I think it is the same as calling from a phone box near the police station. Visually, he wants to see what he's caused. Interestingly, though, San Francisco police asked the Chronicle to delay reporting on the letter for a day, but then a day later, Police Chief Alfred Nelder tells them to print it and includes the bus bomb threat. But they, again, are clever. It appears on page 8 of the Chronicle, and I can't remember the title, but it's got a very dismissive title. So it's not the front page splash he's required. So we're in 1970. We have the abduction of Kathleen Johns in March. We then have 2 letters. We have the dragon card and we have what becomes known as the My Name Is letter in April. He then sends another letter called the Button Letter at the end of June in 1970. And in this, he seems to take credit for the murder of a policeman called Officer Raditich, although we know he doesn't do this one. He says in this letter, in the Button Letter, I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a .38. But for most people, the omission of things mean that they don't believe that he is responsible. He would say cop. He often refers to them as blue meanies or pigs. I think the lack of specification here means I think he is just trying to take credit for it. He also includes a map with a zodiac symbol, which he's changed into a compass, and says that when they solve this riddle of what the compass means, they will find where he's buried the bomb. So back onto this bomb thing. And then on the 24th of July 1970, another letter arrives. And this is the one that's called the Kathleen Johns letter. And this is the first letter that is just not published. The San Francisco Chronicle, the media decide no more publishing of these letters. It's gone on long enough. But notice, it's months after the abduction of Kathleen Johns, and he's contacted the Chronicle numerous times since then. So the Kathleen Johns letter reads, this is the Zodiac speaking. I'm rather unhappy because you people will not wear some nice Zodiac buttons. So I now have a little list, starting with the woman and her baby that I gave a rather interesting ride for a couple of hours one evening a few months back. That ended with me burning her car where I found them. And then he signs it with the Zodiac symbol. Now, this is also the first mention of a little list. We'll get onto that later. But it's a huge clue. So I find it really odd that he makes no mention of Kathleen in the April letters. And I wonder if that's because it wasn't until July that he really thought, I can take credit for that, actually, because she says it's me. I don't know. The police were very dismissive of her saying it was the Zodiac. So whether it had not been sort of big news, there'd been no reference to her saying it was the Zodiac, and then suddenly somewhere, we know that this man is reading the papers, maybe in June or something, someone says, and she identified the Zodiac, and he thinks, okay, I'll take that one. It just seems odd. So 2 days later, on the 26th of July, another letter to the San Francisco Chronicle, and this one is called the Little List letter. And it is long and rambling, so I'm cutting it down. He says, this is the Zodiac speaking. Being that you will not wear some nice Zodiac buttons, how about wearing some nasty Zodiac buttons? Or any type of Zodiac buttons that you can think up. If you do not wear any type of Zodiac buttons, I shall, on top of everything else, torture all 13 of my slaves that I have waiting for me in paradise. He then describes various ways that he's going to torture them. He signs it with the usual Zodiac symbol, but then next to it he does an equal sign and the number 13, and then on the left-hand side he writes SFPD equals 0. So now he's saying he's got 13 murders. And the little list that the name of this letter comes from is yet another reference, like the little list in the previous letter, to the Mikado, in which the Lord High Executioner, Coco, keeps a list of people who exhibit certain characteristics or do things that he thinks are objectionable. And he sings a song called The Little List. In this letter, he basically writes a version of the lyrics to that song. It's just so niche. I mean, I love the Mikado. But I don't think my husband could name one name of it. It's a man who's really into Gilbert and Sullivan enough to quote it in a letter, I think is worthy of note. this is not published in the Chronicles, but behind the scenes, Inspector Armstrong and Toschi, who first came onto the case with the Paul Stein murder, were working to confirm with handwriting experts that the letters were written by the same man. And the lab was checking the letters for fingerprints, and 8 were found. And those working at the paper and the police departments were checked and eliminated as possible matches. So they have got some fingerprints on there. Now, interestingly, Paul Avery is definitely worth noting here. In the late 1960s, Paul Avery was the police reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle, and he's the one who came up with the link between some murders in Riverside that we're going to talk about and the Zodiac cases, and he called this the Riverside Connection. And the coming up with this really puts him in the focus of the Zodiac. The killer had obviously noticed his pieces. As we know, the Zodiac reads the papers, and he sends Paul Avery a Halloween card that he's made himself, and it's posted on the 27th of October 1970, addressed to Paul Avery. Usually they're all addressed to the editor. This one is to Paul Avery, and it says, "From your secret pal, I feel it in my bones you ache to know my name, and so I'll clue you in, ... And then it says on the other side, "But then why spoil the game? Happy Halloween." Now it's decorated with Zodiac symbols, and it has this sort of diagram. It says by fire, by knife, by gun, by rope. And then he writes slaves horizontally. And then he writes paradise vertically, using the A in slaves as the second A in paradise. Now, when I was watching the TV programme with all the great cryptogram brains in one room, they also noted that what was interesting was this was on a design. So when we start talking about possible suspects, there are little things that need to be looked into. Now, there was a design for something Zodiac that used this cross of words, and these guys believe that is something that he's seen, that he's then using again. But obviously, so he's put here, by fire, by knife, by gun, by rope. We know that he's done by gun and by knife. We don't know about the other ones. So that's worth bearing in mind when we look at possible other murders attributed to him. Now, sinisterly, on the front of this Halloween card to Paul Avery, he's written, "Peekaboo, you are doomed." And this was taken by Avery and the police to be a specific death threat to Paul Avery. Now, on Halloween, the Chronicle published a story detailing the arrival of this card. It is on the front page, but it's kind of, again, humorous. And for some light relief, someone at the Chronicle had buttons made saying, "I am not Paul Avery," which staff members, including Paul Avery, wore. Now, news of this card had one very interesting development. It prompted a man to write to Paul Avery anonymously, saying that he'd been trying to persuade the police department in Riverside that the murder of a co-ed 4 years previously had been the work of the Zodiac. And so Paul Avery goes to Riverside to speak to the police department and to find out about this murder. So we're going to talk about the murder of Sherry Jo Bates, that is considered by many to be one of the first Zodiac attacks. On the 31st of October 1966, 18-year-old Sherry Jo Bates had been at the Riverside College library studying until it closed at 9 p.m. Sherry Jo had been a cheerleader at high school. She was popular, thoughtful, and studious. The Bates parents had recently separated and her brother had joined the Navy, so she was living at the time with her father, Joseph. She had a very close relationship with him. Her lime green Volkswagen Beetle was her pride and joy, and that night it was parked outside the main entrance to the library. Police would later find that it had been disabled. She doesn't come home that night, and the next day Sherry Jo Bates was found by a groundskeeper in an alley 75 yards away from her car. She had been beaten and stabbed multiple times with a short-bladed knife, and her throat had been cut. Now, Sherry Jo Bates fought hard. Investigators compared the scene to a freshly ploughed field, and she was found to have human hair and skin under her nails. Her attacker was going to show evidence of this fight. Interestingly, the alley was in between two empty houses that had recently been purchased by the college. Now, had these houses not been empty, then absolutely they would have been seen or heard. Some people said they heard screaming. Whether it was her or not, we don't know. But this couldn't have taken place had those houses been occupied. So that possibly shows that the killer had knowledge of this. Though police found no evidence of robbery or sexual molestation, they did find a man's Timex watch to fit a 7-inch wrist, which they believed would have been ripped off the attacker's wrist during the fierce struggle. Now, it had stopped at 12:24 a.m. They also saw men's military-style boot prints from a size 9 to 10 shoe. And on the interior of the driver's side door of Sherry Jo's car, they found greasy palm and fingerprints, showing that in all likelihood, a man had feigned looking at the engine and trying to start the car. The autopsy showed that the knife had been small, with the blade about 1/2 inch wide and 3 inches long, and some think that this could have been a pocket knife. Her voice box and jugular vein had been severed. It was a really brutal attack. Within 4 days of the murder, the police, who had no unsolved murders open at the time, had interviewed 200 people, and they even arranged for people identified as being in or around the Riverside County College library at the time to stage a reenactment of their movements that night wearing the same clothes. Interestingly, many witnesses said someone was missing. A heavy-set man with a beard had been seen by some on the night, and he was not taking part in this reenactment. In November 1966, 2 anonymous unstamped letters were found addressed in capital letters, printed in black felt tip pen, to the Riverside Homicide Department and the Riverside Press. They were typed in all capital letters through a dozen or so pages of carbon paper and included specific details of the murder which had not been previously released by the police. All envelopes showed the poster had used double the amount of postage needed. The letter is unpleasant, so if you want to skip forward, that's okay. I have cut out some of it, but I'm going to read a bit of it. Miss Bates was stupid. She went to the slaughter like a lamb. She did not put up a struggle, but I did. It was a ball. I first pulled the middle wire from the distributor, then I waited for her in the library and followed her about 2 minutes later. The battery must have been about dead by then. I then offered to help. She was very willing to talk to me. I told her my car was down the street and that I'd give her a lift home. And when we were away from the library walking, I said it was about time. And she asked me about time for what. I said it was about time for her to die. I grabbed her round the neck with my hand over her mouth. But only one thing was on my mind, making her pay for the brush-offs she'd given me in the years prior. I'm not sick. I'm insane. But that will not stop the game. The letter should be published for all to read. Beware, I'm stalking your girls now. In December 1966, a sinister discovery was made. A poem scratched into the surface of a desk in the Riverside College Library was found by a janitor. Measuring 5 inches in length and entitled Sick of Living / Unwilling to Die, it read, "Cut clean if read. Clean, blood spurting, dripping, spilling, all over her new dress. Oh well, it was red anyway. Life draining into an uncertain death. She won't die this time. Someone will find her. Just wait till next time." In April 1967, 3 letters were posted, all saying very similar things. To the Riverside Press Enterprise and Riverside Police Department, the note, written in messy block capitals, said, "Bates had to die. There will be more." There is a stylized Z at the bottom. To Joseph Bates, Sherry Jo's father, the note read, "She had to die, there will be more." Paul Avery believes this handwriting is the same as the Zodiac's. For some, the murder of Sherry Jo Bates can definitively be attributed to the Zodiac, and in November 1970 it was indeed determined to be a definite Zodiac victim. But this again became a point of contention, and her death was still being actively investigated in 2021. I think the use of the word game, double postage, wanting the letter to be published, all feels very Zodiac to me. The murder of Cherry Joe was first attributed to the Zodiac in 1969 when the Riverside Police Department noted similarities between her murder and the Cecilia Shepherd Brian Hartnell case. Then in a letter, this time to the LA Times, it's the first time he's written to the LA Times, postmarked the 13th of March 1971, the Zodiac takes responsibility for the murder of Cherry Joe Bates. In it, he says the police need to, quote, get off their fat asses, but then goes on to say, quote, I do give them credit for stumbling across my Riverside activity, but they're only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there. Now his number of victims is apparently 17. On the 22nd of March 1971, Paul Avery receives another card. This one is known as the Peek Through the Pines card. It's another homemade number. This one shows an image of a ski village cut from the Chronicle, from an advert in the Chronicle, and then random phrases such as past Lake Tahoe areas, which have been stuck on the card, having been cut from other newspapers. So there's no handwriting this time. The card is sent to the police, and Inspectors Tosky and Armstrong start trying to interpret the meaning of random phrases. It often points to... obviously they're concerned it's going to point to another murder. For some, this postcard is evidence that the Zodiac is involved in the disappearance of Donna Lass. In 1965, Donna graduated from St. Joseph Mercy School of Nursing in Sioux City, Iowa, and became a registered nurse. In February 1970, she started to work as a staff nurse at the Letterman General Hospital on the Presidio Army Post, interestingly near where the Zodiac murdered Paul Stein. She then moves to Lake Tahoe a few months later on the California-Nevada border. Now, that's on the weekend of the 5th of September, Labor Day weekend. Donna has made a plan to meet with her friend Joanne after her 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift at the Sahara Hotel and Casino, and they were going to travel to Donna's new flat together. This was Saturday the 5th of September, and Donna never shows up, and eventually Joanne goes and sleeps in a motel, and then she carries on looking for her friend the next day, the Sunday. On Sunday the 6th of September, both the Sahara Hotel and Donna's landlord receive phone calls from a man saying he's passing on a message from Donna, who had to leave the area unexpectedly due to a family emergency. Now, her family immediately knows something's wrong. There's no emergency. And they give the police as much information as possible, and they hire a private investigator to find any information, but they find nothing. No information what happened to Donna Lass has ever come to light. She's never been found. Now, this is unlikely to be a Zodiac victim. The kidnapping aspect is unlike him, though obviously we know that he got Kathleen Johns into his car, perhaps. The phone call wouldn't surprise me, though he seems to be either more the heavy breathing type or the sort of person who confesses. Think of the phone calls he's made to the police after committing murders. This phone call saying that she's had to go out of town serves no purpose. She's disappeared. She's missing. Why give people the opportunity to track you down if by phoning them? I find that very weird. After the Peek Through the Pines letter, the Zodiac goes silent. This is the last letter received until January 1974, and there's a lot of speculation about what happens to the Zodiac in these nearly 3 years of silence. Prison? Hospital? We'll get more into that in episode 3. It's during this lull in his letters that the connection is made between the Lake Berryessa attack and another double murder that seemed sinisterly similar more than 6 years earlier and 300 miles south near San Diego. Linda Edwards and Robert Domingos were a couple. They attended the Lompoc High School, an hour northwest of Santa Barbara. They were in their senior year, they were on senior ditch day, which sounds great, which is a day off before graduating from high school. Robert played varsity football and serves as the vice president of the Future Farmers of America organization. Linda had moved to California from Colorado a few years earlier and had adjusted really well. And they planned to marry that November, and Robert had accepted a job with the Richfield Oil Company. So they're celebrating Ditch Day, but rather than spending the day with friends doing activities, which was usually what people did, the couple decided to go to a remote stretch of beach to spend the day with another couple, but this other couple it pulled out. The boyfriend had to work, and Shirley, the girlfriend, decided not to go along, possibly because being a third wheel isn't that much fun. And so Linda and Robert go themselves. They park their car on the side of Highway 101 behind some shrubs and walk down the long path to the beach. But when they failed to come home the next morning, their families reported the couple missing to the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office. Now, immediately his family start looking, and sadly Robert's car is found by his father Hutch, who then notifies the police and waits by the car. And at 10 p.m. that evening, Hutch, two friends, and police officer Paul Schultz come across a crudely built shack on the beach. The officer tells the others to stay back and looks inside with his flashlight, and he finds the bodies of the two missing teenagers. It appears that the killer approached them while they were sunbathing, got Linda to tie Robert up with pre-cut narrow rope, and then whether they fought or something happened, but both victims attempted to run away and both were gunned down. 18-year-old Robert was hit 11 times and 17-year-old Linda 8 times. The bodies were then dragged 30 feet to a shack where they were hidden, and the killer attempted to burn the shack down. Interestingly, the shack was too small for them to be laid side by side, so Linda was laid on top of Robert, and the front of her bathing suit was cut with a knife to expose her. There was no other evidence of anything sexual going on at all. The area was so remote that it had the car not been there, we don't know how long they'd have been not found. I mean, it was a really remote area. Attempting to hide and then burn the victims was not like the subsequent Zodiac attacks, but the weapon, a .22 caliber semi-automatic, and bullets, Winchester Western Super X, were the same as used in the Lake Herman Road attack, and the approaching of a young couple in a secluded area is very similar to the Lake Berryessa attack. Prints also showed that he wore wing walker boots, and there were no leads until 9 years later, in 1972, the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department issued a press release connecting these murders to the Zodiac, and that connection has never been confirmed, but it does seem to have a lot of similarities. Especially with these things, it's always worth considering who would want to kill these two people. There was no one who would want to kill these two people. If you have a murder with no motive, the motive becomes someone who just wants to murder. And that is thankfully quite unusual. On the 29th of January 1974, the San Francisco Chronicle receives a letter in all too familiar writing. It starts, "I think The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy I've ever seen." He then quotes the Mikado again and says they have to publish the letter or he'll, quote, "do something nasty." By this time, the Zodiac tally is apparently 37 to the San Francisco PD 0. Another letter mailed on Valentine's Day talks about Norse words relating to the Patty Hearst kidnapping. This is not signed by the Zodiac. It has nothing apparently to do with the Zodiac, but writing experts say it is written by the same person as the Zodiac. And then in May 1974, a postcard known as the Citizen Card is really bizarre. And again, handwriting experts say this and the Norse words card are written by the same person as the Zodiac cards. Now, the Citizen Cards urges the newspaper to stop advertising a particular ad for Badlands, which the writer believes glorifies murder. Very odd. And yeah, both of these are believed to be the writer of the Zodiac letters, despite not making any reference to murder or the Zodiac. His last missive is known as the Red Phantom Letter, and this is mailed on the 8th of July 1974. And it's a complaint about one of the paper's regular columnists, and the writing looks like it has been attempted to be disguised. But again, it's agreed by writing experts and everyone involved in the Zodiac case that it is written by the same person. So now it looks like the Zodiac is just writing letters. Has anyone read the Alan Bennett play, A Lady of Letters? So it's pretty good. I'm a bit of an Alan Bennett fan. So despite it not being signed by the Zodiac and even appearing like the writer was trying to make it sound like it was from someone else, and he says he's the Red Phantom, but he says he's red because he's angry, it was enough for the columnist to quit and go and get a job elsewhere. Just even being on the Zodiac's radar was not for him, which is completely understandable. Now, in 1976, the senior partner in the two-man Zodiac team, law enforcement team, Inspector William Armstrong, retires suddenly, leaving Dave Toschi on his own with the case. And this, in turn, would cause problems. So the last signed Zodiac letter is the Exorcist letter, saying that it was the best satirical comedy. That's on the 29th of January, 1974. In 1977, Cherry Joe Bates letters are determined to be the work of the Zodiac. John Douglas, criminal profiler, thinks the language of the Cherry Joe Bates letters points to someone getting revenge for female rejection, not, as the letter implies, specific rejection from Bates. The point of the letter is to terrorize the community, and that really fits with what the Zodiac wants to do. And for me, it feels like primarily he's almost trying to act a part when he commits these murders. Now, obviously, he commits the murders. There's no, that is the awful truth of it. But they're all so different that it's almost like he's being influenced. He's trying to act this part or they're never the same. And it's this terrorizing of a community and publicity that is the primary thing for him. After more than 4 years of silence, the Chronicle then received a letter on the 25th of April 1978 announcing, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking, which should become known as the I'm back with you letter." He calls out many people in this, including Toschi by name, saying that he's good, but the Zodiac is better. But then comes this huge problem in the police department. It would turn out that Dave Toschi had been written about in an article by an author. And after the article was printed, he sent 3 anonymous letters to the author saying, "Wow, that Dave Toschi is a great guy." The author had immediately recognised Toschi's handwriting, but never said anything. But when this new Zodiac letter arrives, Toschi's reinvigorated. He's thrilled. His case is open again. Having gone down to being the only man working on this case that has taken up 9 years of his life, he's now back on it and he gets more men on his team. He's riding high. And the author goes to the police department and says, "Are we sure that Toschi's not the one writing?" Now, the problem is that you look at these letters and they contain information that only the Zodiac or someone working on the case would know. And so this becomes sort of a public outing of something that Toschi had done that was very embarrassing. I mean, who would want to be outed as having written themselves fan mail anonymously? But he was like, "I did it. I was stupid." It's not quite the same as writing this Zodiac letter, but for many, the handwriting experts were kind of split, but they did say that they did think it was a fake, but they ruled out Dave Toschi as being the author of the fake Zodiac letter. So this just adds to the confusion, it muddies the water, and it distracts. So a lot of what goes wrong in the world with media and politics and all of that is that someone will run a distraction. And for the Zodiac, this is great. This is publicity for nothing. And actually the publicity and the problems that were directed at Toski take away from the fact that there are still these murders that are unsolved. And there is another one that is often linked to the Zodiac, which we will cover, and then that will be the end of today's episode. But on Tuesday the 10th of April 1962, so this is years before the official first murder at Lake Herman Road, cab driver Ray Davies picked up a fare at a downtown cab stand, possibly Mission Avenue, and notifies his dispatcher that he was taking this fare to South Oceanside in San Diego County. The next day, he's found in an upscale area called San Marlo, the first gated community. His body has been dumped in an alley, and his killer escaped in his cab, leaving it at 400 South Pacific Street. Ray had been shot twice, one in the back of the head, once in his back, by a .22 caliber. Now, sadly, being a cab driver was a dangerous job. We know from Paul Stein being held up at gunpoint. So why is it that this is thought to be the Zodiac murder? Well, there are lots of similarities to the known Zodiac attacks. The police had received a call from someone before the attack saying that they were going to commit a crime. The attack was on a cab driver in a wealthy area. And after the murder, the police received another call threatening to kill a random bus driver next. Though no DNA was taken from the scene, there are ballistics which can be used. The weapon was a .22 caliber weapon, but with long rifle ammunition, which was the same as used in the Paul Stein murder. So ZodiacKiller.com, which is the ultimate website for all things Zodiac, and it is approved by the police, concludes that there are enough similarities between this and the other Zodiac murders that either it's the same person, i.e. the Zodiac, or the Zodiac saw this reported on and decided to copy it, thought this is a good way to go. Again, I find it really difficult to... That's the dog sighing. I find it very difficult to understand how he can confess to some murders. He can be so eager to confess that before police have even been notified in some cases, he is on the phone near the police station confessing to double homicides. He gives evidence in letters. He takes part of Paul Stein's shirt so that he can send it to the police. He has all of that, but then with other things like this murder of Ray Davies and the Cherry Joe Bates murder, there's no mention of it in later missives. Now, obviously, with this murder, he notifies that the killer phones the police and says he's going to do something. He phones the police to take credit afterwards and threatens a bus driver. That is very Zodiac. But I just wonder why in later letters to the media he doesn't say, like, that cab driver down in Oceanside or like that co-ed. You know, he eventually, once the Riverside connection has been made by Paul Avery, he then refers to the Cherry Joe Bates murder. But before that, there is no mention of it. So I'm really interested in the psychology of that. I'd love to know your thoughts. And that is the end of part 2. In part 3, we're going to go through some of the suspects. If we went through all of the suspects again, it would be an 8-hour episode. If you're interested in the Zodiac, do go and check out ZodiacKiller.com. Do listen to True Crime Garage on it. They do a really good, comprehensive 3 or 4 part episode. So yes, there's lots more information out there for you to go and check it out. I hope you're enjoying it. And until next time, be kind, stay safe, and always check the back seat before you drive.